Teach your brat to follow pool rules.
Ah! You shoved him where his mother taught him to swim.
The splash echoed across the pool deck before I could stop her. Veronica Hastings had just shoved my 8-year-old son into 12 feet of water. Water where his mother taught him to swim before she died. Liam was sinking, panicking, arms flailing in that terrible way drowning children do when they're too scared to remember how to breathe. Maybe drowning will teach him to respect pool rules, the board president said, arms crossed, watching my son sink. What she didn't see was the lifeguard behind her, my brother Marcus, Navy SEAL, already airborne before I could scream, hitting the water in a perfect combat rescue dive. I'm Jake Sullivan, ER nurse, former Navy hospital corpsman. I've saved dozens of drowning victims in my career, and I was about to document an assault with the kind of medical precision that destroys people in court. If you've ever watched someone powerful hurt your child and felt that burning need for justice, you'll understand what happened next, so hit the subscribe button right now. Marcus surfaced with Liam in a textbook carry, one arm under the boy's chest, keeping his airway clear, the other stroking toward the shallow end with mechanical efficiency. 6 seconds underwater. I'd counted every one, 6 seconds that felt like drowning myself. I met them at the pool edge, my hands already assessing. Airway clear, breathing labored but present, pulse rapid but strong. Liam was coughing, crying, terrified. I pulled him onto the deck and started the documentation I'd done 100 times in the ER. Checking for water aspiration, examining the red marks on his shoulders where Veronica had grabbed him, photographing the fingerprint bruises already forming. "What the hell were you thinking?" Marcus's voice was controlled. The kind of control that comes from years of training not to let rage compromise mission objectives. Veronica adjusted her navy blazer, unmoved. That child has been violating pool rules for weeks, running on the deck, splashing other residents, showing blatant disregard for safety. Someone needed to teach him consequences. "He's 8 years old," I said, my voice shaking. Not from fear, from the effort it took not to physically remove her from the property. And he wasn't running, he was walking. You assaulted my son because you didn't like how fast he walked. "I enforced pool safety," she corrected. "If he can't handle deep water, perhaps his family should reconsider pool privileges." That's when I understood. This wasn't about rules. This was about power. About a woman who'd been HOA president for 4 terms, deciding which families belonged in Riverside Commons and which didn't. And my family, the widower, ER nurse with the energetic kid, apparently didn't fit her vision. But here's what the liability zealot didn't know. That pool was sacred ground. 3 years ago, my wife Sarah sat on that wooden bench at the shallow end and taught Liam to float, to kick, to trust water instead of fearing it. She died 2 months later in a car accident, and that bench, the one I'd refinished and added a memorial plaque to, was the last place she'd laughed with our son. Veronica had tried to remove the plaque last year, called it an unauthorized decoration. I'd fought her then, cited HOA bylaws about memorial dedications, and won. She'd hated me ever since. Now she'd escalated from harassment to violence, and she'd done it in front of a Navy SEAL who'd been trained to document combat operations for military tribunals. "Marcus," I said quietly, "tell me you saw everything." My brother was already pulling out his phone, reviewing something. "Got it on video, pool security cameras, angle from the lifeguard chair. Crystal clear footage of her grabbing Liam, dragging him to the edge, and shoving him into deep water." He looked at Veronica with the kind of cold assessment you develop identifying enemy combatants. Also, documented 3 expired fire extinguishers, a broken AED, and water. Chemistry test strips that haven't been changed in 6 months. You know, while I was up there, waiting to save kids from negligent HOA presidents. The woman in the navy blazer went pale. Those cameras don't record. They absolutely do, Marcus said. I checked the system when I volunteered as lifeguard. 16 camera setup, 30-day rolling storage, cloud backup. Your assault on a minor is preserved in 3 separate locations. I stood, Liam clinging to my chest, still shaking. Veronica Hastings, I'm calling the police. I'm filing assault charges. And then I'm going to use every single hour of my medical training to document exactly how close you came to killing my son. She laughed. Actually laughed. You're going to sue the HOA. Good luck. We have liability insurance for exactly this kind of frivolous. I'm not suing the HOA, I interrupted. I'm having you arrested. There's a difference. The pool dictator's confidence finally cracked. Just slightly. Just enough to show she understood she'd made a mistake. She had no idea how big that mistake was. The police arrived 18 minutes after my 911 call. I'd spent those minutes in my living room, treating Liam with the clinical detachment that comes from years in emergency medicine. Temperature check. Slight hypothermia from shock. Lung sounds. Mild rales indicating water aspiration. Psychological state. Traumatized but stable. I documented everything with photographs, time-stamped notes, the kind of evidence chain that prosecutors love. Liam sat wrapped in towels on our couch, his wet hair still dripping onto the cushion Sarah had chosen when we moved here 5 years ago. He looked so small, so fragile. Nothing like the confident kid who'd been laughing in the shallow end 20 minutes earlier. "Daddy, why did she push me?" His voice was hoarse from coughing up pool water. "Because she's mean," I said simply. No point complicating it. He was 8. The nuances of HOA power dynamics and liability obsession could wait until he was older. "But she's not going to hurt you again. I promise." Marcus sat across from us, laptop open, uploading the pool security footage to 3 different cloud servers. Military paranoia. Always have backups of your backups. He'd also been texting someone for the past 10 minutes, his face set in that expression I recognized from our childhood. The one that meant he was planning something methodical and irreversible. "JAG attorney says this is solid," Marcus said without looking up. JAG, Judge Advocate General, military legal system. Of course my brother had connections to Navy lawyers. Assault on a minor, reckless endangerment, possible attempted manslaughter if we can prove she understood the danger. Plus, she committed the assault while exercising HOA authority, which opens up civil liability. "I don't care about money," I said. "I want her in jail." "You should care about both." Marcus finally looked at me. "Jake, I've been volunteering at that pool for 3 weeks. Know what I've seen? Expired lifeguard certifications, broken safety equipment, water chemistry that would fail a health inspection, and at least 4 other incidents where Veronica got physical with kids. She grabbed a 6-year-old last Tuesday for running, except the kid was walking, just like Liam. She's been escalating for months." My stomach dropped. "Why didn't you tell me?" "I was documenting everything first, building a pattern." He turned his laptop toward me. "Look at this." The screen showed a spreadsheet, dates, times, descriptions, witness names. July 12th. Veronica yanked a child's arm hard enough to leave bruises for splashing. July 19th. She confiscated a teenager's pool float and refused to return it, claiming it violated aesthetic standards. August 2nd. She threatened to ban an entire family because their toddler cried too loudly poolside. She's been terrorizing families for the entire summer, I said slowly. And nobody reported her? They tried. The rest of the HOA board dismissed the complaints, said Veronica was maintaining standards and protecting property values. Marcus closed the laptop. But assault changes everything. Now we have criminal charges, video evidence, and a Navy SEAL witness who documented a pattern of child endangerment. The doorbell rang. Detective Ray Thompson stood on my porch, mid-40s, tired eyes, the look of someone who'd worked too many child abuse cases. I'd met him twice before in the ER when I'd treated kids from suspicious accidents. "Jake Sullivan," he said, "I understand your son was assaulted at the community pool." I led him inside, walked him through everything. Showed him the photographs of Liam's injuries, the medical documentation, Marcus's security footage. Thompson watched the video 3 times, his expression darkening with each replay. "That's clear assault," he said finally. "And the statement she made, 'Maybe drowning will teach him,' that's consciousness of guilt. She knew she was endangering him." He looked at Liam, still huddled on the couch. "Son, I need to ask you some questions. Is that okay?" Liam nodded, and I sat beside him while Thompson conducted a gentle interview. What happened, how it felt, whether the board president had been mean before. Liam answered in whispers, occasionally signing to me when words were too hard. Sarah had taught him basic ASL during her speech therapy work. "She's scary," Liam signed, "always yelling at kids." After Thompson left, promising to arrest Veronica within 24 hours, I carried Liam upstairs to bed. He was exhausted, the adrenaline crash hitting hard. I tucked him in, checked his breathing one more time, and sat on the edge of his bed the way Sarah used to. "Am I in trouble?" he asked. "No, baby, you didn't do anything wrong." "But she said I broke the rules." "She lied." I smoothed his wet hair back. "Grown-ups aren't always right, and when they hurt kids, other grown-ups make them face consequences." After he finally fell asleep, I went back downstairs. Marcus had made coffee, strong, military grade, the kind that keeps you alert during mission planning. "I pulled the HOA's insurance policy," he said, handing me a printed document. "Liability coverage specifically excludes intentional acts of violence by board members, which means if you sue, Veronica's personally liable. The HOA's insurance won't cover her." "How did you get the insurance policy?" "It's public record. HOAs have to file with the state." He pointed to a clause buried in the fine print. "And here's the interesting part. The policy requires annual pool safety inspections by certified operators." I checked the county records. Last inspection was 18 months ago. I read the document more carefully. If they're not maintaining required inspections, the insurance company can void coverage. For the entire HOA, not just Veronica. Marcus smiled grimly. "So when you sue her, and the insurance company discovers she's been falsifying safety reports, they'll void the policy, which means every homeowner in Riverside Commons becomes personally liable for any pool-related lawsuits." The implications hit me. The community will turn on her. The community will destroy her. Marcus pulled up another document on his phone. "I also contacted the Florida Department of Health. They regulate public pools. Told them I witnessed a child endangerment incident at a pool that hasn't had a proper inspection in over a year. They're sending inspectors tomorrow." I stared at my brother. "You've been planning this since the assault happened." I've been planning this since the first time I saw the liability zealot grab a kid. He met my eyes. Nobody pushes my nephew into a pool and walks away, Jake. Nobody. The HOA pool office smelled like chlorine and stale coffee. I'd come here the morning after the assault to file a formal incident report, standard procedure, before lawyers got involved. Monica Chen sat behind the desk, her hands trembling as she shuffled papers that didn't need shuffling. She was maybe 38, always impeccably dressed, always smiling at neighborhood events. Today, she looked like she'd aged a decade overnight. Her eyes were red-rimmed, and she kept glancing at the closed door like she expected someone to burst through. "Jake, I'm so sorry about what happened to Liam," she said, not meeting my eyes. It was terrible, completely unacceptable." "Then why are you still sitting at that desk?" I kept my voice level, but the question landed hard. "You're the pool operator. You sign off on safety inspections. You work directly under Veronica. Are you telling me you didn't know she was dangerous?" Monica's fingers went to her necklace, a nervous habit I'd seen her do at board meetings when discussions got heated. I've tried to talk to her about the way she handles children, but she's the board president. She makes it clear that questioning her judgment has consequences. "What kind of consequences?" She finally looked at me, and I saw real fear there. "I'm a real estate agent, Jake. Veronica used to be one too. She still has connections at every major brokerage in the county. Last year, another board member questioned her budget decisions. Within a month, his real estate license was under review for ethical violations that mysteriously appeared in his file. The investigation cleared him, but it took 6 months and cost him $20,000 in legal fees. So you stayed silent while she escalated from verbal abuse to physical assault." "I documented everything," Monica's voice cracked. She pulled open a desk drawer, then quickly closed it again, looking at the door. "I've been keeping records, every incident, every time she grabbed a child, every time she invented a new rule designed to drive families away. I didn't know how to stop her without destroying my own career." The door was still closed. Veronica wasn't here. Detective Thompson had arrested her 2 hours ago. Monica knew this, but she was still afraid. "Show me," I said. She hesitated, her hands hovering over the drawer. Her left eye twitched, tiny spasm she probably didn't realize was visible. Her breathing had gone shallow, every instinct in her body screaming that opening that drawer meant crossing a line she couldn't uncross. "If I give you this," she whispered, "she'll know it was me. She'll destroy me." "She just tried to drown my 8-year-old son." I leaned forward. "How many more kids need to get hurt before you decide your real estate license isn't worth their safety?" Monica flinched like I'd slapped her. Her hands dropped to her lap, clenched together so tightly her knuckles went white. She was crying now, silent tears that she didn't bother wiping away. "I have a daughter," she said finally. "She's 12, swims at that pool every summer, and last month, the pool dictator grabbed her arm and told her to stop showing off because she was doing handstands in the shallow end." Monica's voice went hollow. "I saw the bruises that night, and I did nothing because I was afraid." What changed? I watched her push Liam into 12 feet of water, watched him sink, watched your brother have to rescue him because I've been helping Veronica falsify the safety reports that should have gotten that pool shut down months ago. She opened the drawer with shaking hands, pulled out a thick folder. Every inspection I signed off on was fabricated. The water chemistry, the equipment checks, the lifeguard certifications, all of it. Veronica told me what numbers to put in the reports, and I put them there because I was too scared to refuse. She spread the contents across the desk. Inspection reports with falsified signatures. Emails from Veronica with explicit instructions. Mark the AED as functional. Don't actually test it. Report chlorine levels at 3 ppm regardless of actual reading. Approve Marcus Sullivan as volunteer lifeguard, but note his certification expires in 30 days. We'll forget to verify renewal. Jesus Christ, I muttered, photographing each document with my phone. This is systematic fraud. It gets worse. Monica pulled up her email, turned the screen toward me. She's been diverting pool maintenance funds. See this invoice for resurfacing work last spring? $40,000 paid to Riverside Pool Services. That company doesn't exist. It's a shell corporation she created. The pool was never resurfaced. Look at the crack patterns in the deep end. They're getting worse every month. I stared at the emails, the falsified invoices, the evidence of embezzlement hiding behind pool management. Why would she risk this for $40,000? Because she's obsessed with control. Monica's voice turned bitter. She believes that HOAs exist to enforce order, that families with disruptive children, her words, lower property values and increase insurance liability. She's been systematically targeting young families, making their lives miserable until they leave. 7 families in 2 years, Jake. 7 families with kids under 10 have sold their homes because the board president made it unbearable to stay. And you have proof of this targeting? She nodded to the folder. Incident reports she made me file. Violation citations. Emails discussing problem families and strategies to encourage relocation. Everything you need to prove this wasn't isolated. This was a campaign. A voice from the doorway made us both jump. Monica, what the hell are you doing? Veronica Hastings stood there, still in the clothes she'd worn during booking. Her navy blazer wrinkled now, her hair disheveled. She must have posted bail already. Her eyes went from Monica to the documents spread across the desk to my phone in my hand, and her face transformed into something ugly. You're giving evidence to him? The enforcer in crimson said, her voice dangerously quiet. After everything I've done for your career, after I helped you get your license? Monica stood, and I saw something shift in her posture. The fear was still there, but underneath it was something harder, resolve. You helped me get my license so you'd have leverage over me, Monica said. So I'd sign whatever you wanted. So I'd lie on safety reports and cover up your embezzlement and pretend I didn't see you hurting children. She picked up the folder, handed it to me. I'm done being afraid of you. The board president's eyes fixed on me with pure hatred. You're making a mistake, Sullivan. A very expensive mistake. No, I said, tucking the folder under my arm. You made the mistake when you pushed my son into that pool. Everything that happens now is just consequences. Detective Thompson called me at 6 a.m. the next morning. I'd been awake for hours. Adrenaline and rage make poor sleeping companions. Liam was still asleep, upstairs, exhausted from nightmares that had him waking every few hours, reaching for me. Jake, we need to talk, Thompson said. Veronica Hastings posted bail last night, and she's already filed a counter-complaint claiming your son initiated the incident by recklessly running toward the pool edge, and she was attempting to prevent him from falling in. My grip tightened on the phone. That's insane. The security footage shows her grabbing him and shoving him into the water. I know, but her attorney is arguing she was executing a pool safety intervention and that the force used was reasonable under the circumstances. Thompson sighed. They're trying to paint this as an HOA official performing her duties, not assault, making it about rule enforcement, not child endangerment. So what happens now? State Attorney's Office is reviewing the case. With the video evidence and your brother's testimony, they'll press charges. But Veronica's lawyer is good. Former prosecutor, knows how to muddy waters. This could get ugly before it gets better. After we hung up, I went to check on Liam. He was awake, staring at his ceiling with that 1,000-yard stare I'd seen in too many traumatized kids during my ER shifts. "Can we go to the pool today?" he asked quietly. "Why would you want to go back there?" "Because if I don't go back, she wins." He looked at me with Sarah's eyes, that same stubborn determination she'd had when facing things that scared her. "Mommy said the water is for being brave. I want to be brave." My heart shattered and reformed in the same moment. "Okay, but Marcus comes with us, and we stay in the shallow end." 2 hours later, we walked through the pool gates. The complex was nearly empty, unusual for a Saturday morning in Florida summer. The few families present went silent when they saw us, and I realized word had spread. Everyone knew what the liability zealot had done. Marcus was already in the lifeguard chair, wearing his red swims, trunks, and the official Riverside Commons lifeguard shirt. He gave Liam a thumbs up, and my son smiled for the first time since the assault. We were in the shallow end maybe 10 minutes when Veronica appeared at the pool gate. She'd changed clothes, back in her typical navy blazer and pressed slacks, clipboard in hand, looking every inch the HOA president who'd ruled this community for 4 terms. "The Sullivan family is banned from pool usage pending investigation of rule violations," she announced loudly, reading from her clipboard like she was delivering a royal decree. "Effective immediately." Every head turned. A mother with 2 young children gathered her kids and left quickly, fear of being associated with trouble. But an older man I recognized as Frank Werner didn't move. Neither did the Rodriguez family in the kiddie pool. "You don't have authority to ban anyone," Marcus called from the lifeguard chair. "You're under criminal investigation. The board should have suspended you pending trial." "The board serves at my direction," the woman in the navy blazer said. "And I direct that families who demonstrate disregard for safety protocols be removed from communal amenities." I stood, water dripping from my swim trunks, and walked to the pool edge. Liam stayed in the shallow end, watching with wide eyes. "You assaulted my son. You're facing criminal charges. And now you're trying to ban us from a pool my family has every legal right to use because you're angry I called the police." "I'm enforcing HOA bylaws." She held up the clipboard. "Section 12(4). The board president may restrict access to common amenities for residents who pose safety risks or liability concerns." "That section applies to property damage and insurance claims," Monica's voice cut in. She'd appeared behind Veronica, still in her work clothes, looking like she hadn't slept either. "Not to families you personally dislike, and you know it." The enforcer in crimson turned, and I saw calculation in her eyes. "Monica, I suggest you remember who signs your annual pool operator contract. The board votes on contracts, not just you." Monica's voice was steady now, the trembling from yesterday gone. "And I've already contacted the other board members. They're calling an emergency meeting this afternoon to discuss your suspension pending the criminal trial." "On what grounds?" "Assault of a minor, falsification of safety reports, embezzlement of HOA funds. Take your pick. Monica pulled out her phone, showed it to Veronica. I sent them everything this morning. The fake inspection reports, the shell company invoices, the emails where you told me to lie about equipment failures. I watched the board president's face cycle through emotions: shock, rage, fear, then something colder, more dangerous. You've destroyed your career, she said quietly. I'll make sure every brokerage in Florida knows you falsified official documents. You'll never work in real estate again. Maybe, Monica said, but at least I'll be able to look at my daughter without feeling like a coward. Veronica's eyes swept the pool area, the few remaining families watching. Marcus in the lifeguard chair documenting everything. Me standing protective in front of Liam. She was losing control, and she knew it. This isn't over, the pool dictator said, looking directly at me. You think you can destroy what I've built here? I've been protecting this community for 8 years, maintaining property values, keeping standards high, keeping certain kinds of families from dragging us down. Certain kinds? Frank Werner stood from his lounge chair. You mean families with kids? Families who actually use the amenities we pay for? Or do you mean families who don't quietly accept your bullying? I mean families who can't control their children and expect everyone else to accommodate their chaos. Veronica's mask was slipping now, revealing the contempt underneath. Families who think rules don't apply to them, who think their precious little snowflakes can do whatever they want without consequences. My son is 8 years old, I said, voice low and controlled. And you pushed him into deep water to teach him a lesson about walking too fast. That's not protecting the community. That's assault. And when the state attorney finishes with you, when the insurance company investigates your fraud, when the homeowners realize you've been stealing from them, you're going to learn what consequences actually look like. She turned and left without another word. But I saw her hands shaking as she clutched that clipboard. The woman who'd terrorized families for years was finally understanding she'd pushed the wrong child into the wrong pool in front of the wrong witness. Marcus climbed down from the lifeguard chair and knelt by Liam in the shallow end. You did good, buddy. Stayed calm, stayed safe. Your mom would be proud. Liam looked up at him. Uncle Marcus, is the bad lady going to come back? Not if I can help it, Marcus said. And I am a Navy SEAL. Helping it is kind of my specialty. My shift at Jacksonville Memorial's pediatric ER started at 3 p.m. I'd arranged for Marcus to watch Liam, but my mind wasn't on work. It was on the folder Monica had given me, the one currently locked in my car trunk with copies stored in 3 cloud servers, because I'd learned from my brother to always have backups. Dr. Emily Park found me in the break room during my first hour, reviewing medical charts without really seeing them. She was 51, had been my mentor since I'd transferred to pediatrics, and had a 6th sense for when her nurses were distracted. Jake, you look like hell, she said, pouring herself coffee. What's going on? I told her everything. The assault, the arrest, the falsified safety reports. When I got to the part about Veronica pushing Liam into 12 feet of water, Emily set down her coffee with a sharp clink. Bring me your son, she said. Today, I want to examine him personally and document every injury for court. I already documented. You documented as a parent and an ER nurse. I'm going to document as a pediatric trauma specialist who's testified in 50 child abuse cases. Her voice hardened. And I'm going to write a medical opinion that explains exactly what happens to an 8-year-old's body when an adult forcibly submerges them in deep water against their will. The lung trauma, the psychological damage, the drowning statistics. An hour later, Marcus brought Liam to the ER. My son looked tiny in the pediatric exam room, sitting on the table in his t-shirt while Dr. Park conducted the most thorough physical examination I'd ever witnessed. She photographed the bruises on his shoulders, now fully developed, 4 distinct fingerprint marks on each side. She listened to his lungs for a full 5 minutes, documenting the residual rales from water aspiration. "Liam, I need to ask you some questions about what happened," Emily said gently. "Is that okay?" He nodded, and she walked him through it. The memory was still fresh, still traumatic. He described Veronica's hands grabbing him, the shock of being airborne, the moment of hitting water and not knowing which way was up, the panic when his feet couldn't touch bottom. "Were you scared?" Emily asked. "I thought I was going to die like Mommy," Liam whispered. The room went silent. Emily glanced at me, and I saw the professional mask slip for just a second. The pediatrician who'd seen too many traumatized children recognizing another one. After the exam, Emily pulled me aside in the hallway while Marcus took Liam to the vending machines. "Jake, this is severe psychological trauma on top of physical assault. That child genuinely believed he was dying. And the trigger, associating drowning with his mother's death, that's going to require therapy, probably years of it." "How bad is it legally?" "For Veronica Hastings? Catastrophic." Emily opened her tablet, showed me the medical report she'd just filed. "I'm documenting this as physical assault resulting in water aspiration injury, acute psychological trauma with PTSD indicators, and high-risk drowning scenario prevented only by immediate professional rescue intervention. I'm also noting that without your brother's Navy SEAL training, this would likely be a wrongful death case." I read her clinical notes. They were devastating. Each paragraph detailed another layer of harm: physical, psychological, developmental. The kind of documentation that turns misdemeanor assault into felony charges. "There's something else," Emily continued. "I pulled the county medical examiner's database. In the past 3 years, there have been 2 near-drowning incidents at Riverside Commons Pool that resulted in ER visits. Both were children under 10. Both had injuries consistent with adult-applied force. Neither case was prosecuted because families didn't press charges." My blood ran cold. She's done this before. At minimum, she's created conditions where children nearly drowned. At worst, she's been physically abusive to multiple minors and getting away with it because families were too scared to fight back. Emily closed her tablet. "You need to contact those families. If we can establish a pattern, the state attorney can charge her with systematic child endangerment." I called Detective Thompson immediately. He arrived at the hospital within 30 minutes, took copies of Emily's report, and pulled the incident records Emily had found. "This changes everything," Thompson said, reviewing the files. 2 previous near drownings at the same pool, both involving young children, both with suspicious injuries. Combined with Monica Chen's testimony about falsified safety reports and your son's assault, we're not looking at one bad decision. We're looking at criminal negligence that's been ongoing for years. Can you find the other families? Already on it. He made notes in his phone. One family still lives in Riverside Commons. The other moved to Georgia, but they're on social media. If they're willing to testify... Marcus appeared in the hallway with Liam, who was eating a candy bar and looking slightly more like himself. My brother's expression told me he'd heard enough of the conversation to understand what we'd discovered. "How many kids?" Marcus asked quietly. "At least 3 that we know of," Thompson said. Could be more that never made it to the ER or weren't documented properly. So the liability zealot has been systemically endangering children for years, falsifying safety records to cover it up, and using HOA authority to intimidate families into silence. Marcus's voice had gone flat, the tone I recognized from when he talked about enemy combatants. And the HOA board just let her do it. The board either didn't know or chose not to know, Thompson said, which makes them potentially liable, too. I thought about the emergency board meeting Monica had mentioned, about the other board members who'd rubber-stamped Veronica's decisions for years, about the insurance policy that specifically excluded coverage for intentional violence. Detective, what happens when the insurance company finds out their pool operator has been filing false safety reports? I asked. They investigate, and if they determine the HOA knowingly falsified documents, they void the policy. Thompson looked at me. Why? Because Marcus found the insurance policy. It requires annual inspections by certified operators. The last real inspection was 18 months ago. Everything since then has been fabricated. I pulled up the photos on my phone, showed him Monica's falsified reports. Veronica has been committing insurance fraud to hide the fact that the pool is dangerously under-maintained. Thompson's eyes widened. If the insurance company voids coverage, every homeowner becomes personally liable for pool incidents. 180 families, Marcus confirmed, all potentially on the hook for lawsuits because the board president was too cheap to properly maintain the pool and too controlling to let children use it safely. Jake, Thompson said slowly, when this becomes public, and it will become public, the community is going to turn on her with a vengeance. Property values, insurance rates, personal liability. You're not just ending her HOA presidency. You're ending her life as she knows it. I looked at Liam, still processing his trauma, still having nightmares about drowning. I thought about Sarah's memorial bench, the sacred space Veronica had tried to erase. I thought about the other children who'd nearly died, while the enforcer in crimson falsified reports and blamed victims. Good, I said. She tried to drown my son to prove a point about pool rules. She deserves every consequence that's coming. Thompson stood, gathered his files. I'm meeting with the state. Attorney tomorrow. With Dr. Park's medical opinion, Monica Chen's testimony, the falsified safety reports, and evidence of previous incidents, we're looking at multiple felony charges. This isn't going away, Jake. This is going to trial. I know. I picked up Liam, held him close. And I'm going to be there for every single day of it. The wooden bench at the shallow end had weathered 3 Florida summers since I'd refinished it. Sarah's memorial plaque gleamed in the late afternoon sun. She taught us to trust the water. I sat there alone, 24 hours after Dr. Park's examination, trying to decide how far I was willing to take this fight. My phone buzzed. Marcus. Jake, you need to see this. I'm at the pool. I found him in the equipment room behind the pump house, a space I'd never been inside. It smelled like mildew and chlorine, and the state of it made my stomach turn. Rusted equipment, expired chemical containers, first aid supplies with dates from 2021. The AED Monica had certified as functional hung open, its battery corroded and useless. If someone had a cardiac event at this pool, Marcus said, this thing wouldn't work. They'd die while we waited for paramedics. He showed me more. Life preservers with dry rot. Pool testing strips that expired 18 months ago. Emergency oxygen tank reading completely empty. Every piece of safety equipment that should have been maintained, inspected, and certified was either broken or dangerously outdated. Monica signed off on all of this? I asked. Every month for the past 2 years. Marcus photographed each item methodically. But look at this. He pulled out a cardboard box from under a shelf, filled with fresh, unexpired equipment. Brand new AED still in packaging, current testing strips, functional life preservers with tags showing purchase date from last month. Veronica bought the proper equipment, I realized. She just never installed it. Because that would require admitting the current stuff was inadequate, which would mean admitting she'd been lying on safety reports. Marcus opened another box, maintenance logs, but these were handwritten, not the official ones Monica filed. These are the real inspection records. Look at the dates. I scanned the pages. The actual pool maintenance had been spotty at best. Missed chemical treatments, delayed repairs, equipment failures documented, but never reported to the board or insurance company. She knew, I said quietly. The board president knew this pool was dangerous and kept it open anyway. It gets worse. Marcus pulled out his laptop, showed me something he'd downloaded from the county permit database. 3 months ago, a structural engineer inspected the pool during routine county reviews, found stress cracks in the deep end that required immediate repair. Estimated cost, $65,000. The report was filed with the county and copied to the HOA. Let me guess, the repairs were never made. No, repairs. No board discussion. No emergency assessment to fund the work. Veronica buried the report and kept the pool open. Marcus's voice was hard. Kids have been swimming over structural damage that could cause catastrophic failure. If that deep end collapses while people are in the water... I couldn't finish the thought. My son had been shoved into that same deep end, the same water that sat over cracks threatening to rupture. My phone rang. Monica Chen. Jake, the emergency board meeting is tonight, 7 p.m. at the community center. They're voting on whether to suspend Veronica pending criminal trial. Her voice was shaking. But she's been calling board members all day, threatening them, reminding them about past favors and past secrets. 3 of the 5 members are wavering. What about you? I'm not on the board, just secretary. I don't get a vote, but I'll be there to present evidence. She paused. Jake, you should come. The homeowners need to hear what she's been hiding. After we hung up, I called Detective Thompson, told him about the equipment room, the structural damage, the pattern of deliberate negligence. That's criminal endangerment, Thompson said immediately. Knowingly operating a hazardous facility where children congregate. Combined with the assault charge and the falsified reports, we're building towards 20 years minimum if she's convicted on everything. What about the board members who knew and did nothing? Depends on what they knew and when. If we can prove they were aware of the structural damage and voted to keep the pool open, they're accessories. Thompson's keyboard clicked in the background. I'm contacting the county engineer who filed that report. If he testifies the HOA was explicitly warned about the danger, then everyone who kept that pool open is liable. Criminally and civilly. Jake, this is bigger than your son's assault now. This is systematic endangerment of an entire community. I walked back to Sarah's bench, sat down, and made a decision. This wasn't just about Liam anymore. It was about every child who'd been at risk because the liability zealot cared more about avoiding insurance claims than protecting lives. It was about every family who'd been driven away, every parent who'd been intimidated into silence. I pulled out my phone and started making calls. The Rodriguez family who'd stayed at the pool during Veronica's ban attempt. Frank Werner, who'd challenged her. the parents of the other two children who'd nearly drowned. One by one, I told them about tonight's board meeting, about the evidence we'd found, about the chance to finally hold the woman in the navy blazer accountable. By 6 p.m., I had commitments from 15 families to attend. By 6:30, Marcus had printed and organized all the evidence: photos of the equipment room, the structural engineer's report, Monica's falsified inspection logs, Dr. Park's medical assessment of Liam's injuries. At 6:45, I picked up Liam from the neighbor who'd been watching him. He was playing with toy boats in her pool, shallow, supervised, safe. "Daddy, are you going to fight the bad lady?" he asked in the car. "Yeah, buddy, I am." "Will you win?" I thought about the evidence stacked against Veronica, the criminal charges, the insurance fraud, the structural damage she'd hidden, the children she'd endangered, the families she'd terrorized. "I think so," I said. "But even if it takes a long time, I'm not giving up, because nobody gets to hurt you and walk away. That's a promise." He was quiet for a moment. Then, "Mommy would say you're being brave. Mommy would say we're both being brave." I met his eyes in the rearview mirror. And she'd be right. At 7 p.m., I walked into the Riverside Commons Community Center, carrying a folder that would destroy everything the pool dictator had built. The room was packed, at least 50 homeowners, more than I'd expected. They'd come because word had spread, because people were finally ready to stop being afraid. Monica sat in the front row, pale but determined. Marcus stood against the back wall, arms crossed, looking every inch the military operator on a mission. And at the board table, Veronica Hastings sat in her usual seat, clipboard in front of her, looking at the crowd like she still believed she could control them. She had no idea what was coming. The board president called the meeting to order, her voice steady despite the tension crackling through the room. "We're here to discuss baseless allegations made against me by residents who refuse to accept proper HOA governance." I raised my hand. "I'd like to present evidence relevant to tonight's vote." Her eyes locked on mine, and I saw the calculation there. The woman who'd spent 8 years intimidating families was trying to decide if I was bluffing. I wasn't bluffing. And she was about to find out exactly what evidence looked like. The community center went silent as I walked to the front of the room. 50 pairs of eyes followed me, some curious, some hostile, most just exhausted from years under Veronica's rule. I set the folder on the presentation table and pulled out the first document. "This is a structural engineering report filed with the county 3 months ago," I said, holding it up. "It documents stress fractures in the deep end of our community pool requiring immediate $65,000 repairs. The engineer classified the damage as high risk for catastrophic failure." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Board member Richard Hayes leaned forward. "I never saw that report." "Because the board president buried it," I said. "Never brought it to a vote. Never disclosed it to homeowners. Never closed the pool for repairs. She kept it open knowing the structural integrity was compromised." Veronica stood, her voice sharp. "That report was preliminary. I was seeking second opinions before alarming the community." "For 3 months?" Marcus cut in from the back. "While children swam over cracks that could collapse at any time? That's not due diligence. That's criminal negligence." I pulled out the next set of documents, photos of the equipment room, passed them down the rows of homeowners, watched faces change as people saw the rusted emergency equipment, expired supplies, the useless AED. "These are the actual safety conditions at our pool," I continued. Compare them to the monthly inspection reports filed with our insurance company, reports signed by Monica Chen certifying everything is functional and up to code. All eyes turned to Monica. She stood slowly, hands trembling, but voice steady. "I signed those reports," she said, "and every single one was a lie. Veronica Hastings instructed me to falsify pool safety inspections for the past 2 years. She told me what numbers to record regardless of actual conditions. She threatened my real estate career if I refused." The room erupted. Board members shouting questions, homeowners demanding answers, the enforcer in crimson trying to regain control by banging her gavel, but nobody was listening anymore. "That's slander," Veronica shouted. "Monica Chen is a disgruntled employee trying to—" "I have the emails," Monica interrupted, pulling out her phone. "Every instruction you gave me, every threat you made, every time you told me to lie on official documents." She looked at the crowd. "I was a coward for 2 years. I enabled her because I was afraid. But last weekend, I watched her push an 8-year-old boy into 12 feet of water. Watched him nearly drown because she decided walking too fast near a pool deserved a death sentence. And I decided my real estate license wasn't worth another child's life." She handed her phone to board member Sarah Patel, who read the emails aloud. With each message, Veronica's expression shifted from outrage to something approaching panic. "Mark the chlorine at 3 ppm regardless of actual reading," Sarah read. "Don't test the AED, just certify it as functional. If inspectors ask about the deep end cracks, tell them we're monitoring the situation." She looked up. "Veronica, these emails came from your HOA account. You instructed Monica to commit fraud." "I was protecting our insurance rates," the liability zealot said, and I heard desperation creeping into her voice. "Do you know what happens to premiums when you file maintenance claims? When you report safety issues? The rates skyrocket. I was saving this community thousands." "You were committing insurance fraud," I cut her off. "And when the insurance company discovers you've been filing false safety reports, they'll void our policy, retroactively, which means every homeowner in this room becomes personally liable for any pool-related lawsuits from the past 3 years." The room went deathly quiet as that reality sank in. Frank Werner stood, his voice shaking with rage. "You mean if someone had drowned in that pool? If those structural cracks had collapsed, we'd all be personally liable because you lied to the insurance company?" "It was necessary," Veronica said, but her authority was crumbling. "The board gave me discretion to manage pool operations." "The board didn't give you discretion to endanger children," Sarah Patel slammed her hand on the table. "We trusted you to follow the law, to keep our families safe, and instead you've been running a criminally negligent operation while threatening anyone who questioned you." Monica stepped forward again, and I saw she was crying. "There's more. Veronica created a shell company called Riverside Pool Services. Over the past 2 years, she's paid this fake company $43,000 from HOA maintenance funds. The company doesn't exist. The invoices are fabricated. She's been embezzling from us." Now the board members were on their feet. Richard Hayes pulled out his phone, presumably calling the HOA's attorney. Sarah Patel was reviewing financial records on her tablet. The third board member, Tom Mitchell, looked like he might be sick. "This can't be true," Tom said weakly. "We review the finances every quarter." "You review summaries I provide," the woman in the navy blazer said, then seemed to realize she'd just confirmed the embezzlement. "I mean, the accounting is complicated." "The accounting is fraudulent," Marcus said, moving to the front. I'm Marcus Sullivan, Navy SEAL and certified volunteer lifeguard. I've been documenting safety violations at this pool for 3 weeks. Want to know what else I found? He pulled out his own folder. 4 separate incidents where Veronica Hastings physically grabbed, pushed, or otherwise assaulted children at the pool, all documented on security footage she didn't know was still recording. He set up his laptop, connected it to the community center projector. The screen lit up with video, date-stamped, crystal clear. July 12th. Veronica yanking a 6-year-old girl by the arm hard enough to lift her off her feet. July 19th. Veronica shoving a teenager into the pool fence. August 2nd. Veronica grabbing a young boy by his swim trunks and dragging him toward the exit. And then the most recent footage. My son. The shove. The fall into 12 feet of water. Marcus diving in. The rescue. Parents in the audience were openly crying. One mother I recognized, her daughter had been the 6-year-old in the July video, stood up shaking. "That was my Emma," she said. Veronica told me Emma had misbehaved and needed discipline. I believed her because she was the board president. I didn't know she'd hurt my daughter like that. Other families started speaking up. The teenager from the fence incident. The boy who'd been dragged by his swim trunks. A pattern of violence spanning the entire summer. All covered up. All dismissed as pool safety enforcement. The pool dictator had gone pale. She looked around the room at the faces that had once feared her, now united in rage and betrayal. "I want to vote," Sarah Patel said, "all in favor of immediately suspending Veronica Hastings from the board pending criminal investigation and full financial audit." 4 hands went up. Only Tom Mitchell hesitated, and even he eventually raised his hand after looking at the crowd of angry homeowners. "Motion passes unanimously," Sarah said. "Veronica, you're suspended. Hand over all HOA documents, passwords, and financial records, effective immediately." For the first time since I'd known her, the enforcer in crimson had nothing to say. She just stood there, clipboard clutched to her chest, looking at the ruins of everything she'd built through intimidation and fraud. "This isn't over," she finally said, looking directly at me. "You're right," I replied. "It's not, because next comes the criminal trial, and after that, the civil lawsuits, and then you'll spend years watching everything you tried to protect, your reputation, your authority, your freedom, disappear because you decided my son's life was worth less than your pool rules." Security, 2 off-duty police officers the board had hired for tonight, escorted Veronica from the building. As she left, Monica approached me. "I should have done this 2 years ago," she said, "before she hurt so many families." "You did it now," I said. "That's what matters." But I knew the truth. We'd won tonight's battle. The real war was just beginning. Marcus's temporary quarters were military precise, bed made with hospital corners, equipment organized by function, laptops set up like a command center. We sat at his small table at midnight, building what he called the complete operational picture. "You've got criminal charges already filed," Marcus said, ticking items off on a notepad. "Assault on a minor, child endangerment, reckless conduct. Detective Thompson's pushing for felony assault given Liam's age and the drowning risk. That's 2 to 5 years if convicted." "Not enough," I said flatly. "I know, which is why we're not stopping there." He pulled up a document on his laptop. "The insurance fraud angle is your nuclear option. Once the carrier investigates and voids the policy, Veronica becomes personally liable for any injuries that occurred while she was falsifying reports, and every homeowner becomes exposed to lawsuits. The community will destroy her. The community will sue her into bankruptcy, but that takes months, maybe years. Marcus pulled up another file. There's a faster path. The Florida Department of Health regulates public pools. They can shut down the facility immediately if they find violations. And, based on what we documented in that equipment room, they'll find dozens of violations. More than that. They'll find a pattern of deliberate non-compliance. Marcus showed me the regulations. Every requirement Veronica had ignored, every safety standard she'd violated. When a pool operator knowingly falsifies inspection reports to a state agency, that's a separate criminal charge, third-degree felony in Florida, up to 5 years. I studied the documents, my ER training kicking in. This was triage, prioritizing which legal attacks would do the most damage fastest. What about the embezzlement? 43,000 in fraudulent invoices over 2 years. That's grand theft, another third-degree felony. Add it to the insurance fraud, the assault, the child endangerment. Marcus did the calculation. We're looking at a combined potential sentence of 20+ years if prosecutors stack the charges. Will they? That depends on how cooperative she is. If she takes a plea, maybe she serves 5 years. But if she fights, if she keeps claiming she was just enforcing rules and protecting the community, prosecutors will bury her. I thought about Veronica's face at the board meeting, her insistence that she'd done nothing wrong. The woman who'd built her authority on intimidation wasn't the type to admit defeat. She'll fight, I said, which means we need to make the case so airtight she can't win. Marcus nodded. Already working on it. I've contacted JAG. They have attorneys who specialize in civilian criminal defense. They'll consult for free given my active duty status. I've also reached out to the families of the other kids in those security videos. 3 of them want to press charges. 3 more assault cases? 3 more victims establishing a pattern. Prosecutors love patterns. Makes it impossible to claim this was an isolated incident. He pulled up more files. I've also been in touch with the county engineer who filed the structural report. He's willing to testify that he explicitly warned the HOA about the deep-end cracks and recommended immediate closure. That testimony proves Veronica knowingly endangered children. My phone buzzed. An email from someone I didn't recognize. Allison Rodriguez, Senior Investigator, Atlantic Coast Insurance Group. Subject line: Urgent. Policy Review, Riverside Commons, HOA. I opened it. Mr. Sullivan, I'm investigating irregularities in the pool safety documentation filed by Riverside Commons HOA. Your name was provided by Detective Thompson as someone with relevant information. Please contact me at your earliest convenience. This matter involves potential policy fraud that requires immediate review. I showed Marcus. His expression shifted to something predatory. The insurance company is already investigating. That was fast. Thompson must have sent them everything: the falsified reports, Monica's confession, the equipment room photos. Which means they're going to void the policy, probably within days. Marcus checked his watch. Jake, when that happens, the HOA will be legally required to notify all homeowners that they are uninsured. Property values will crater, people will panic, and they'll all be looking for someone to blame. Veronica. And when angry homeowners start filing lawsuits, slip and falls at the pool, property damage, anything remotely connected to the pool complex, she'll be personally liable for all of it because she's the one who committed the fraud. He pulled up a property records database. She owns her home outright. Estimated value, $650,000. That becomes the target for civil judgments. I called Allison Rodriguez. She answered immediately despite the midnight hour. "Mr. Sullivan, thank you for calling. I need to be direct. We've received evidence suggesting your HOA has been filing false safety certifications for at least 2 years. If that's accurate, Atlantic Coast will void the liability policy effective immediately." "It's accurate. I have documentation from the pool operator who filed the false reports under duress from the board president. I also have photos of the actual safety conditions compared to what was reported." "Can you send those tonight?" I forwarded everything: Monica's emails, the equipment, room photos, Marcus's safety violation documentation, the structural engineer's report. Within 10 minutes, Rodriguez called back. "Mr. Sullivan, this is the most clear-cut case of insurance fraud I've seen in 15 years. We're voiding the policy as of tomorrow morning and filing a civil suit to recover premiums paid during the fraud period. That's approximately $85,000 we'll be seeking from the HOA and Veronica Hastings personally. How does this affect the homeowners? They're exposed to personal liability for any incidents that occurred during the fraud period. We'll be sending formal notification to all residents tomorrow. I'd recommend they secure independent legal counsel." She paused. "Mr. Sullivan, I understand your son was the assault victim. You should know, Atlantic Coast will not be providing any defense for Ms. Hastings in your lawsuit. She's on her own." After we hung up, Marcus was already drafting something on his laptop. "I'm writing up the operational timeline, every incident, every piece of evidence, every agency involved. Detective Thompson gets one copy, the state attorney gets another, and we keep the master file. Why the detail? Because in complex prosecutions, cases fall apart when evidence gets disorganized or witnesses forget details. I've seen it happen in military tribunals. We're going to make this so clean, so documented, that there's no room for Veronica to slip through procedural cracks." He looked at me. "Jake, you're an ER nurse. You know how to document trauma, create medical records that hold up in court. I'm a SEAL. I know how to document operations so thoroughly that every decision can be defended later. Between us, we're going to build a case file that prosecutors dream about." I thought about Liam, asleep at home, still having nightmares about drowning. About Sarah, who'd never see her son grow up. About every family the liability zealot had terrorized. "How long will this take?" I asked. "The criminal trial? 6 to 8 months minimum? Civil lawsuits? Could be years. Full justice?" Marcus met my eyes. "However long it takes, we're not stopping until she's convicted, bankrupt, and every family she hurt gets compensation." "And the pool?" "State Health Department inspection is scheduled for tomorrow at 9 a.m. Based on what they'll find, they'll red tag it immediately, shut down until full compliance. That means Veronica's legacy is a closed pool, voided insurance, and a community that wants her head." He pulled up one final document, and when it reopens, after tens of thousands in repairs, the HOA will have to fund through special assessments. I'm recommending they rename it Sarah Sullivan Memorial Pool. So every time anyone swims there, they remember what happens when you prioritize control over safety. My throat tightened. Sarah's name on the pool where she'd taught our son to trust water, where her memory lived in every ripple. "She'd like that," I said quietly. "She'd be proud of you," Marcus corrected. "You're not just getting justice for Liam, you're making sure no other family goes through this. That's what Sarah would want." He was right. This wasn't revenge anymore. This was systemic change, making sure the woman who'd terrorized families for years faced every possible consequence so that the next HOA president would think twice before putting power ahead of safety. The phone rang again. Detective Thompson. Jake, state attorney just approved additional charges: insurance fraud, grand theft, falsifying government documents, and systematic child endangerment. We're arresting Veronica again tomorrow morning with the upgraded charges. New bail, $250,000. She might not make it this time. Good, I said. Let her sit in jail and think about what she's done. After midnight, I drove home past the community pool. Dark now, empty, the water still. But tomorrow morning, state inspectors would arrive. The insurance company would notify homeowners. The news would spread, and Veronica Hastings would wake up to discover her entire world had collapsed in less than 48 hours. The Florida Department of Health inspector arrived at 8:50 a.m., 10 minutes early. I'd taken a personal day from the hospital to watch this happen. Marcus stood with me at the pool gate as Teresa Gomez, mid-50s, carrying a clipboard that actually meant something, began her inspection. She started with the equipment room. I heard her muttered, "Jesus Christ," through the open door within 30 seconds. 15 minutes later, she emerged with a camera full of photos and an expression I'd seen on doctors' faces when they found something terminally wrong. "Mr. Sullivan, I need you to understand. In 23 years of inspecting public pools, I have never seen negligence this egregious." She walked us through her findings. The AED hadn't been tested in over 2 years. The emergency oxygen tank was not just empty, but had a cracked valve that would have made it useless even if filled. Life preservers with dry rot so severe they'd sink instead of float. Chemical storage violations that could have caused toxic gas release. And the deep end cracks the structural engineer had flagged as high risk, had worsened visibly since that report was filed. "This pool is an active hazard," Gomez said, pulling out a red placard. "I'm issuing an immediate closure order. This facility cannot reopen until every violation is corrected and re-inspected. Based on what I'm seeing, you're looking at minimum $80,000 in repairs, possibly more if the structural damage is worse than visible." "How long will closure take?" "Months, maybe 6, maybe a year if the deep end needs to be completely resurfaced." She attached the closure placard to the pool gate, bright red, official, impossible to miss. "I'm also referring this to the state attorney for criminal prosecution. Someone knew about these violations and kept this pool open anyway. That's criminal negligence." Word spread through Riverside Commons within the hour. By noon, my doorbell had rung 6 times. Homeowners demanding to know what was happening, why the pool was closed, whose fault it was. I told them the truth. Their board president had been falsifying safety reports for years, and now everyone was paying the price. The insurance company's notification letters arrived in the afternoon mail. I watched neighbors collect them from mailboxes, watched faces go from confusion to horror as they read the contents. Policy voided due to material misrepresentation. All residents potentially liable for incidents during fraud period. Seek independent legal counsel immediately. By 3 p.m., an angry crowd had gathered at Veronica's house. Not violent, but loud, demanding answers, demanding she face them. The woman in the navy blazer never came outside. Her curtains stayed drawn while homeowners shouted on her lawn about property, values, insurance rates, and legal liability. Detective Thompson called at 4 p.m. Second arrest executed at noon. Veronica Hastings is in county jail on upgraded charges. Bail set at $250,000. Her attorneys arguing for reduction, but the judge is unimpressed given the severity and the flight risk assessment. Can she make bail? Her husband filed for divorce this morning. froze their joint accounts. Her personal assets are tied up in the house, which is about to be underwater in lawsuits. Unless she's got cash hidden somewhere, she's staying in jail until trial. Monica called 10 minutes later, voice shaking. Jake, I just got a letter from the state attorney. They want me to testify in exchange for immunity. If I cooperate fully, they won't charge me as an accessory to the fraud. Are you going to do it? Already signed the agreement. I'm done protecting her, done protecting myself. She paused. The new board is meeting tonight. They want to discuss pool, repairs, insurance replacement, and special assessments. Preliminary estimate is $4,500 per household to cover the costs. I did the math. 180 homes times $4,500. $810,000 in emergency assessments because the liability zealot had been too cheap to properly maintain the facility and too controlling to admit problems existed. That evening, I took Liam to Sarah's memorial bench. The pool behind us was dark, red placard glowing in the security lights. He sat close, still clingy since the assault, still having nightmares. Is the bad lady coming back? He asked. No, she's in jail, and she's going to stay there for a long time. Because she pushed me? Because she hurt you? Because she lied about the pool being safe? Because she did bad things and tried to hide them? I pulled him closer. Sometimes people with power think they can do whatever they want, but there are rules for everyone, even people in charge, and when they break those rules, they face consequences. Like timeouts, like jail, like losing everything they built through being mean. I looked at the closed pool, the red placard, the evidence of systematic failure. Your mom would say justice is like medicine. Sometimes it tastes bad, but it makes things better. Liam considered this. Will the pool ever open again? Someday, after they fix everything, make it actually safe. I touched the memorial plaque on the bench. And when it does, it's going to have Mom's name on it. So everyone remembers that pools are supposed to be places of joy and learning, not fear and punishment. Marcus found us there at sunset. State attorney wants to meet tomorrow. They're offering Veronica a plea deal. 15 years if she pleads guilty to all charges. 25 if she goes to trial and loses. Her attorney is advising her to take the plea. Will she? Her ego won't let her. She still thinks she was right, that she was protecting the community. Marcus sat on the other side of Liam. Which means this goes to trial. Which means every family she hurt gets to testify. Every piece of evidence gets presented publicly. Every news outlet in Jacksonville covers the HOA president who tried to drown a child and committed systematic fraud. I thought about that. Veronica's face on the evening news, her crimes detailed in newspapers, her name permanently associated with child endangerment and embezzlement. The kind of public destruction that followed someone forever. Good, I said. Let everyone see what happens when you put power ahead of children's safety. My phone buzzed. An email from a local news producer requesting an interview. Then another from a reporter at the Florida Times-Union. Then a message from a disability rights advocacy group wanting to highlight the case as an example of HOA overreach. The story was spreading. The pool dictator's downfall was becoming public narrative. Jake, Marcus said carefully, you ready for this? Once you do interviews, once this goes fully public, there's no going back. You become the face of this fight. I looked at Liam, at Sarah's memorial plaque, at the closed pool that represented everything Veronica had broken through her obsession with control. I'm ready, I said. Let's make sure everyone knows her name and what she did to earn it. The next morning, the Jacksonville News ran the first story. HOA president arrested after assaulting child, falsifying safety reports. By noon, it had been picked up by state media. By evening, national outlets were calling. The enforcer in crimson had spent 8 years ruling through fear and silence. Now the silence was broken, and the fear had turned to fury. 180 families demanding justice. 7 families who'd fled seeking compensation. Multiple children ready to testify about abuse disguised as rule enforcement. Marcus was right. This wasn't ending in quiet settlement. This was ending in public trial, permanent record, complete annihilation of everything Veronica Hastings had built. And I was going to be there for every single minute of it. The Atlantic Coast Insurance Group's regional office felt like a courtroom, sterile, cold, designed to make people uncomfortable. I sat across from Allison Rodriguez and 2 other investigators, Marcus beside me, folders full of evidence spread across the conference table. Rodriguez pulled up a video on the monitor, pool security footage of Veronica shoving Liam. She'd watched it 3 times already. Each viewing, her expression grew harder. In 15 years investigating insurance fraud, I've never seen someone document their own criminal negligence this thoroughly, she said. Your former board president filed monthly reports certifying equipment as functional, while security cameras recorded her walking past broken, expired, or missing safety gear. She certified water chemistry as compliant, while the actual test strips expired on the shelf. She reported structural inspections as complete, while hiding an engineer's report about catastrophic failure risk. What happens now? I asked. We voided the policy effective the date she filed her first falsified report, approximately 27 months ago. We're also suing the HOA and Veronica Hastings personally to recover $87,000 in premiums paid during the fraud period. Rodriguez slid a document across the table. This is the formal notification being sent to all Riverside Commons homeowners today. They need to understand their exposure. I read the letter. It was devastating. Every homeowner potentially liable for any pool incident during the fraud period. Anyone injured could sue individual residents since no valid insurance existed. Property values would collapse once this became public record. How many potential claims are there? Marcus asked. Rodriguez pulled up a spreadsheet. During the fraud period, we received 3 injury reports from Riverside, Commons Pool. All were closed as minor incidents. Scraped knees, slipped falls, nothing major. But under Florida law, injured parties have 4 years to file suit. If any of those people discover the pool was being negligently operated during their injury, they can sue now, I finished, even though years have passed. Exactly, and the HOA has no insurance to defend or indemnify, which means homeowners are personally exposed. She looked at me. Mr. Sullivan, your lawsuit against Veronica Hastings and the HOA, when you file it, and you should file it, will trigger a cascade. Every family she drove out will sue. Every injury victim will sue. Every homeowner will sue her for the financial damage her fraud caused. We estimate she's facing north of $2 million in combined liability. She doesn't have $2 million. No one does, which is why she'll file bankruptcy, lose her house, and spend the next decade unable to own property or serve on any HOA board in Florida. Rodriguez closed her laptop. But that's civil. The criminal charges are what really matter. After the meeting, Marcus and I drove to the state attorney's office. Assistant State Attorney Catherine Walsh greeted us in a conference room where she'd assembled the case against the woman in the navy blazer. 3-ring binders, evidence bags, witness lists. It looked like preparation for a murder trial. Veronica Hastings is being charged with 17 counts, Walsh said, ticking them off. Assault on a minor, 3 counts of child endangerment, insurance fraud, grand theft embezzlement, falsifying government documents, 5 counts of reckless endangerment, and criminal mischief. If convicted on all counts, she's looking at 47 years maximum. Will she take the plea? I asked. Her attorney recommended it. 15 years, eligible for parole in 10. She refused. Walsh smiled without humor. She told her lawyer, and I quote, "I was protecting the community from liability exposure and disruptive families. I will not plead guilty to doing my job." Marcus shook his head. She still thinks she's the victim, which makes her the perfect defendant for trial. Juries hate people who hurt kids and refuse to show remorse. Walsh pulled out a trial timeline. We go to court in 4 months. I'll need both of you to testify, Jake about the assault and Liam's injuries, Marcus about the safety violations and rescue. I'll also be calling Dr. Park, Monica Chen, the state health inspector, the structural engineer, and 3 other families whose children Veronica assaulted on video. What about Liam? I asked. Does he have to testify? I'd prefer not to put an 8-year-old on the stand, but I need the jury to see him, understand what she did to him. Can he sit in the courtroom during your testimony? I thought about my son, still having nightmares, still afraid of deep water. Then I thought about justice, about teaching him that bad people face consequences when they hurt others. He'll be there, I said, if he's ready. Walsh handed me another document. This is the victim impact statement you'll read at sentencing if we get a conviction. Start thinking about what you want to say, what this did to your family, what it took from you. I took the blank form, knowing I'd fill it with everything. Sarah's memory defiled, Liam's trauma. The sanctuary turned into a weapon. Every word would matter when the judge decided how long the liability zealot spent in prison. As we left, I called the Rodriguez family, the parents whose teenage son had been shoved into the pool fence. They'd agreed to press charges after seeing the security footage. The mother answered, voice tight with suppressed rage. Jake, our attorney says we can sue Veronica personally for what she did to Miguel. He still flinches around authority figures, still has nightmares about being hurt for breaking rules he didn't actually break. File the lawsuit, I said. Join the line. Make sure she pays for every child she hurt. By evening, I'd heard from 4 more families, all filing civil suits, all demanding compensation for trauma, therapy costs, emotional distress. The pool dictator had spent 8 years terrorizing vulnerable families, and now they were united against her. The special HOA board meeting happened that night. 167 homeowners packed into the community center, all demanding answers about the $4,500 assessment for pool repairs. New board president Sarah Patel stood at the front, visibly exhausted. The pool requires complete structural repair, new safety equipment, updated chemical systems, and full code compliance. Total cost, $810,000. That's $4,500 per household in special assessment due within 60 days. The room erupted. Homeowners shouting about property values, insurance nightmares, financial burden. Some demanded the pool be permanently closed rather than repaired. Others wanted to sue Veronica for the full cost. We are suing her, Sarah said, but she'll file bankruptcy. We won't recover more than her home equity, maybe $400,000 after the mortgage and other liens. The rest falls on us." Frank Werner stood. "Then we raise the assessment and we rename that pool. Make it a memorial so everyone remembers what happens when you put one person in power for too long without oversight." "Rename it what?" someone called out. "Sarah Sullivan Memorial Pool," Frank said, looking at me. "After Jake's wife. The woman who taught her son to love water before Veronica Hastings tried to weaponize it against him." The room went quiet, heads turned toward me. I stood slowly, Liam beside me holding my hand. "My wife died 3 years ago," I said. "She built that memorial bench so our son would have a place to remember her. Veronica tried to remove the plaque, tried to erase her memory because it didn't fit her vision of what the pool should be." My voice cracked. "If you rename the pool in Sarah's honor, you're saying something important. You're saying safety matters more than control. Children matter more than rules. Memory matters more than property values." A woman in the back started clapping. Then another. Within seconds, the entire room was applauding. Sarah Patel called for a vote. "All in favor of renaming the community pool Sarah Sullivan Memorial Pool?" 167 hands rose. The enforcer in crimson had tried to make the pool her kingdom. Instead, it would become a memorial to everything she'd destroyed and everyone who'd fought back. 4 months later, I walked into the Duval County Courthouse with Liam's hand in mine and Marcus flanking us like the protective operator he was. The trial of Florida verse Veronica Hastings had drawn media attention. Local news vans lined the street, reporters shouting questions as we climbed the steps. The courtroom was packed. I recognized faces from Riverside, Commons, families who'd been targeted, homeowners devastated by the special assessment, board members who'd finally found their courage. Monica Chen sat in the 3rd row, hands clasped in her lap. Dr. Emily Park was waiting in the witness room. Detective Thompson stood near the prosecutor's table, arms crossed, watching everything. Veronica Hastings sat at the defense table in a conservative gray suit, her navy blazer abandoned. She looked smaller than I remembered, but her jaw was still set in that stubborn line that said she believed she'd done nothing wrong. Judge Patricia Mendez called the court to order. Assistant State Attorney Catherine Walsh stood for opening arguments. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, this is a case about power and cruelty. For 8 years, Veronica Hastings wielded authority over Riverside Commons Homeowners Association. She used that authority to terrorize families, falsify safety reports, embezzle community funds, and ultimately assault a child because he walked too fast near a pool." Walsh pulled up the security footage on courtroom monitors. "You're going to watch an 8-year-old boy get shoved into 12 feet of water by an adult who believed teaching lessons justified endangering a child's life." The video played. Liam grabbed him, dragged him to the edge, the shove, the fall, the sinking. I felt Liam's hand tighten in mine as he watched his own near drowning replayed for strangers. 2 jurors were crying before Marcus appeared on screen, diving in, executing the rescue. Walsh let the silence hold. That rescue was performed by Marcus Sullivan, a Navy SEAL who happened to be on lifeguard duty. Without his training, without his immediate response, Liam Sullivan would have drowned, and Veronica Hastings would be on trial for manslaughter instead of assault. The defense attorney, James Crawford, tried to reframe the narrative. "My client was a dedicated HOA president trying to maintain safety standards in a community pool, frequented by children. Was her method of intervening with young Liam Sullivan optimal? No, but her intent was to prevent him from running into dangerous areas, not to harm him. He wasn't running, Walsh cut in during cross-examination of Crawford's opening. Security footage shows him walking, and Ms. Hastings' own words, "Maybe drowning will teach him to respect rules," prove her intent wasn't safety. It was punishment. Monica Chen took the stand first. She walked the jury through 2 years of falsifying reports under Veronica's orders, the threats to her career, the mounting guilt that finally broke when she witnessed the assault. "I signed documents certifying equipment as functional when it was broken," Monica testified, voice shaking. "I reported water chemistry as compliant when I hadn't tested it in weeks. I approved structural inspections that never happened, all because the board president told me to, and I was too afraid to refuse." "Why were you afraid?" Walsh asked. "Because she destroyed anyone who challenged her. She found their vulnerabilities, financial problems, professional licenses, family secrets, and weaponized them. I watched her drive 7 families out of the community through systematic harassment. I didn't want to be number 8. The structural engineer testified next, confirming he'd filed an urgent report about the deep-end cracks and explicitly recommended immediate closure. "I made it clear this was a high-risk situation. Children were swimming over structural damage that could collapse catastrophically. The HOA president acknowledged receipt of my report and did nothing." "Nothing at all?" Walsh pressed. "She buried it, never brought it to a board vote, never disclosed it to residents, never closed the pool. For 3 months, families swam in a facility I'd classified as dangerous." He looked at the jury. If those cracks had given way while the pool was occupied, multiple people could have died. Teresa Gomez, the state health inspector, detailed the violation she'd found. "In 23 years of pool inspections, I've never seen negligence this egregious. Expired safety equipment, broken emergency systems, falsified chemical records, structural damage hidden from regulators. This wasn't an oversight. This was systematic disregard for public safety." Then came the other families. Miguel Rodriguez's mother describing how the liability zealot had shoved her son into the pool fence, leaving bruises and trauma. The parents of 6-year-old Emma Martinez, whose arm had been yanked hard enough to require medical evaluation. A father whose toddler had been verbally assaulted for crying too loudly. Each testimony built the pattern. Each story proved this wasn't about one bad decision. It was about years of targeting families with children, escalating from verbal abuse to physical violence. Dr. Emily Park testified about Liam's injuries. Water aspiration injury, acute psychological trauma, PTSD indicators, consistent with near-death experience. This child genuinely believed he was dying. The trigger, associating drowning with his mother's death, will require years of therapy. "In your professional opinion," Walsh asked, "was this assault life-threatening?" "Absolutely. An 8-year-old child forcibly submerged in 12 feet of water with no warning, no preparation, experiencing panic-induced paralysis, without immediate professional rescue. Liam Sullivan had perhaps 15 to 20 seconds before drowning became irreversible." The courtroom went silent. I felt Liam trembling beside me. Then it was my turn. I took the stand, placed my hand on the Bible, swore to tell the truth. Walsh walked me through the day of the assault, watching my son playing safely in the shallow end, turning away for seconds, hearing the splash, seeing him sinking. "Describe what you saw when you reached the pool edge," Walsh said. Liam was underwater, not swimming, sinking. His arms were moving, but not coordinated, not effective. He was panicking, inhaling water, drowning. My voice broke. And Veronica Hastings was standing there watching. She said, "Maybe drowning will teach him to respect rules." She said it like she was satisfied, like watching a child drown was appropriate punishment for walking too fast. What happened next? My brother Marcus pulled him out, performed rescue breathing, saved his life while Veronica stood there trying to justify what she'd done. I looked at the jury. I'm an ER nurse. I've treated drowning victims. I know what the statistics look like. Without Marcus, my son would be dead, and the woman in the navy blazer would have called it an accident. Crawford cross-examined, trying to suggest I was exaggerating, that Liam had been running despite video evidence. But the footage didn't lie. Neither did the medical records. Neither did the voice of a father describing the moment he thought he'd lost his son. Marcus testified last, walking the jury through the rescue with military precision. I observed the defendant grab the minor by both shoulders, forcibly move him to the pool edge, and push him into 12 feet of water with significant force. The child immediately exhibited drowning behavior, vertical orientation, ineffective arm movement, head submerged. Time underwater before my intervention, 6 seconds. Estimated time to irreversible drowning without intervention, 15 seconds. This was not a safety intervention. This was assault. The jury deliberated for 4 hours. When they filed back in, not one looked at Veronica. On the charge of assault on a minor, how do you find? Guilty. 17 counts. 17 guilty verdicts. I watched the enforcer in Crimson's face as each one landed, watching her realize she'd lost everything. Judge Mendez scheduled sentencing for 2 weeks out. As bailiffs led Veronica away in handcuffs, she looked at me one last time. No defiance now, just the hollow realization that 8 years of terrorizing families had ended in complete destruction. Justice tasted like salt water and vindication. 2 weeks later, I stood before Judge Mendez for sentencing, the victim impact statement trembling in my hands. Liam sat in the front row with Marcus, wearing the same blue shirt he'd worn the day he nearly drowned. Your Honor, I began. 3 years ago, my wife Sarah died in a car accident. Before she passed, she made me promise to keep our son safe and connected to the water she taught him to love. That community pool was sacred ground, the last place they'd laughed together, the last place she'd watched him swim without fear. I looked at Veronica, handcuffed at the defense table. Veronica Hastings tried to weaponize that sacred space. She targeted my son because his joy, his energy, his existence offended her obsession with control. And when I dared to challenge her authority, she escalated to violence. She shoved an 8-year-old into 12 feet of water and watched him drown because she believed teaching him respect mattered more than his life. My voice cracked. Liam still has nightmares, still associates drowning with losing his mother, still flinches when adults raise their voices. He'll need years of therapy to undo the trauma she inflicted in 6 seconds of cruelty disguised as rule enforcement. Judge Mendez listened to 3 more victim impact statements. Parents whose children had been assaulted, families driven from their homes, homeowners financially devastated by her fraud. Then came sentencing. Ms. Hastings, Judge Mendez said, you held a position of trust in your community. You were elected to protect residents, maintain property, ensure safety. Instead, you terrorized families, endangered children, committed fraud, and ultimately assaulted a minor. Your refusal to accept responsibility, your insistence that you were just enforcing rules, demonstrates a fundamental lack of remorse. She paused, reviewing the sentencing guidelines. On 17 counts, I sentence you to a total of 28 years in state prison, with parole eligibility after 18 years. You are permanently banned from serving on any HOA board in Florida. You will pay restitution totaling $873,000 to affected parties. And you will have no contact with any of your victims or their families. 28 years. The liability zealot would be 70 years old before parole consideration. Her empire of intimidation reduced to a prison cell and a bankruptcy filing. As bailiffs led her away, Veronica looked back at the gallery one last time. No defiance, no justification. Just the hollow realization that her obsession with control had cost her everything. 6 months later, I stood at the reopened pool with Liam, watching the dedication ceremony for Sarah Sullivan Memorial Pool. The deep end had been completely resurfaced, eliminating the structural cracks. New safety equipment lined the deck, functional AED, current life preservers, emergency oxygen that actually worked. Professional lifeguards with current certifications rotated on duty, and above the main entrance, a bronze plaque, Sarah Sullivan Memorial Pool. In memory of a mother who taught her son to trust water, and in honor of all who fought to make this space safe, love is braver than fear. Marcus stood beside the renovated memorial bench, Sarah's original plaque now incorporated into a larger installation detailing the pool's history and reformation. She would have loved this, he said quietly. Knowing her legacy became about protecting kids instead of just remembering her. Liam tugged my hand. "Can I swim now, Daddy?" "Of course, buddy." He ran to the shallow end, not walking, actually running this time, because children were finally allowed to be children here. He jumped in with a splash, laughing, other kids joining him. No citations for excessive joy. No adults screaming about rule violations. Just children playing in water that was actually safe. Monica Chen approached, her daughter swimming alongside Liam. The new board approved my pool operator contract renewal, but this time with external auditing. No one person controls the safety reports anymore. "How's your real estate career?" "Rebuilding. Turns out honesty sells better than I expected." She watched the kids play. "I'm also volunteering with a nonprofit that helps HOA residents fight abusive boards. Sharing what I learned about documentation, legal resources, standing up before it escalates." She looked at me. "You inspired that. Watching you refuse to be intimidated, refuse to let her get away with it." Frank Werner joined us poolside, his grandchildren splashing in the kiddie pool. Property values are recovering. New families are moving in. Young couples who heard about the community that reformed itself, that chose children's safety over control. The Rodriguez family arrived with Miguel, who'd testified at trial despite his fear. The Martinez family came with Emma, whose arm bruises had been documented as evidence. 7 families who'd fled Riverside Commons returned for the dedication, some considering moving back now that the woman in the navy blazer was gone. We were healing, slowly, painfully, but healing. Dr. Emily Park found me near Sarah's bench. "How's Liam's therapy progressing?" "Better. He's swimming again without panic attacks. Still has occasional nightmares, but they're less frequent." I watched him dive underwater, come up laughing. He told his therapist last week that he's not afraid of drowning anymore because he knows Uncle Marcus and Daddy will always protect him. "That's significant progress," Emily smiled. "And you, how are you processing everything?" I thought about the trial, the testimony, the sentencing, about watching justice actually happen for once, about the community that had rallied around protecting children instead of enabling abuse. "I'm okay," I said. Sarah would say I honored the promise, kept Liam safe, made sure the space she built stayed sacred. She'd be proud. As the dedication ceremony concluded, new board president Sarah Patel announced the formation of the HOA Safety Oversight Committee, independent auditors reviewing all maintenance decisions, mandatory term limits for board members, transparent financial reporting, and a residents' Bill of Rights that explicitly protected children's access to amenities. "We will never allow one person to hold this much unchecked power again," Patel said. "What happened here? The fraud, the abuse, the systematic endangerment that ends permanently. This community belongs to families, not to petty tyrants who think control matters more than safety." The crowd applauded. Marcus started a water safety class for kids at the shallow end. Liam joined immediately, demonstrating skills his mother had taught him years ago. I sat on Sarah's bench, watching my son reclaim joy in water that had almost killed him. The pool where Veronica Hastings had tried to teach him fear through violence had become a memorial to love, courage, and the refusal to accept cruelty as authority. The enforcer in crimson would spend the next 18 years in prison, watching time pass while the community she'd terrorized rebuilt itself into something better. And every child who swam in Sarah Sullivan Memorial Pool would grow up knowing that bullies, even powerful ones, eventually face consequences when good people refuse to stay silent. If you've been targeted by an abusive HOA, if you've watched someone in power hurt the vulnerable, if you've ever been told to stay quiet and accept mistreatment, know this: documentation matters, witnesses matter, standing up matters. So hit that subscribe button now, share this video, and let me know in the comments, where are you watching from? Veronica Hastings thought her authority made her untouchable. She was wrong. They're always wrong. If you want more stories about standing up to HOA tyranny and protecting communities from abuse, share your experience in the comments and let me know where you're watching from. Your story matters. Your fight matters. And together, we're changing what neighborhoods look like, one memorial pool at a time.